all of this happen. And we're so thrilled that you can be here. Because it's such a special event, we have Dr. Kindred Murillo, our college president, here to welcome all of you. So Dr. Murillo.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, good. I want you to be totally awake because this is an important moment at Southwestern College. And I can't tell you how excited I am that we are having our very special speaker here today. The stories of the Holocaust are stories we cannot afford to dismiss or lose in our narrative. And to have Dr. Branscombe bring this distinguished speaker to speak with us and share her experiences is an honor.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for being here.
Thank you for having
We're
us.
so appreciative of you sharing your experiences.
This is our copy.
Oh, wow, thank you. Okay, that's a wonderful surprise. I would like to introduce Dr. Max Branscombe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. It's a ginormous honor for me to be here and to be able to introduce our special guest. First of all, shalom.
Hello.
Which means peace. Anyway, journalists like me really hate it when people who don't like our work call us fake news. As if saying that is just going to make it go away. But I can only imagine what it must be like for someone who survived the Holocaust to hear people say that it didn't happen or that it was somehow exaggerated. In the United States, the problem isn't so much denial of the Holocaust as a lack of awareness. Some of you may have read the New York Times this last week that barely half of Americans know about the Holocaust at all, which shocked me. And the people that are least aware are you guys, young college-age adults. And that's my fault, and that's the fault of your teachers for not talking about it more. So I'm very happy to have an expert here to help educate us about this incredibly important piece of history. Mrs. Sax was born almost 91 years ago in what is now the Czech Republic. Young Ruth was very creative and dreamed of being a fashion designer in Paris. When she was 13 years old, however, her family was rounded up by German Nazis, and she was imprisoned for the crime of being Jewish. Ruth was transferred to several Nazi camps over the next 4.5 years, including Auschwitz. She came face to face at least 6 times with the sadistic Joseph Mengele, who was a so-called doctor, who performed cruel and murderous experiments on human subjects. And that must have been a terrifying thing to have to deal with. Mrs. Sax luckily survived and was rescued by Allied troops, which she called a miracle. After the war, she met Kurt Sax in Czechoslovakia and moved to Chula Vista in 1952. She raised 2 daughters, including my dear friend, Sandy Scheller, who was the best costume designer that I've ever met in my 41 years of doing theater, and the author of this best-selling and award-winning book about her mother's life. Anyway, Mrs. Sax was active in the New Life Club, which was a support group for Holocaust survivors. She served as president of the Sisterhood at the Temple Beth Shalom in Chula Vista and was on the board for Jewish Family Services. She did her very best to move on from the savagery of the Nazis and to find happiness, but she never forgot. And we should never forget either. And she has spent the last 65 years working to make sure that others never forget the Holocaust. In Kohelet 9:17 of the Jewish Torah, it reads, "The words of the wise are heard when spoken softly." Ruth Sax speaks softly, but her words echo like thunder. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very, very honored to introduce one of the toughest, most courageous, and most important people I have ever met, Mrs. Ruth Sax.
Thank you.
have wires here, so let's see if we can go under the wires.
It's okay. First of all, let me say thank you for coming and giving me the opportunity to share my life with you.
Hold on, let's see if we can get better mic'd here. Are we on? Testing 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2.
Not so close, Annie. As you know, my name is Ruth Goldschmidova Sax. You probably wonder where did this Ova came, Goldschmidova. Well, my maiden name was Goldschmidt, but if you are a woman in a Slavic country, they add for women the ending OVA, Ova. So I was Ruth Goldschmidova. Today I am blessed because I can celebrate with you. As I look at my life, today I know that I'm the luckiest person on earth because of my dear family and friends that I'm surrounded by, and to this I say, thank you, God. I'm one of the few survivors of the Holocaust, not from 1 or 2, from 3 camps. I'm not sure if you have ever met a Holocaust survivor, so here I am. There is a saying among the Holocaust survivors, and that is, remember not to forget. What? That there should never be another Holocaust, and this will not be permitted. Right now, you can see that the world never learned, and that today people are getting killed because of their beliefs, the way of life. The people who suffer the most are the surviving families. I belong to organizations which are made of Holocaust survivors. I even belong to one in the Czech Republic, located in Prague. The other one is in the New Life here in San Diego. These clubs let survivors bond, and this is how we stay informed, communicate, and celebrate happy occasions and honor those who have passed. Between my birth until I was 10 years old, I had a nice childhood. I was lucky to have everything I wanted. I was an only child, and yes, I was very spoiled. Mostly, I have very loving parents. Maybe a couple of months before the invasion of our home, I might have been heard of Hitler a few times because he occupied 25 kilometers all around the country, and it was called Sudetenland. But imagine a few months later finding out that Hitler occupied everything. Chamberlain in England made a deal that he would sell Czechoslovakia to Hitler as long as they would not shoot in England. But guess what? He shoot anyway. I was 10 years old, and on the 14th of March, 1939, my mother's birthday, we never cut the cake. I went to sleep. My mother was looking for music on the radio. An announcement came on the radio about Hitler and troops invading. My mother woke me up around midnight and told to get dressed and quickly. We went downstairs and got into a cab. I could not believe that we were not taking the family car, but my father was scared to take his car because it was brand new and he heard that cars were getting damaged. We went to my father's factory that he represented, and lo and behold, there was his supervisor, his dear friend, wearing a swastika on his lapel. He told us to leave and go home. We tried to get into a cab, but were told that Jews could not get into cab and to take the train. We were on the back of the train, and when we got home, we were greeted by SS officers. They went through the house looking for anything and everything that they felt like looking for and taking what they wanted. They even took the keys to the new family car. My father was very, maybe there's another word,
Smart.
smart man, and he told his non-Jewish friend about the car being taken away. Within a week, his friend was able to convince the SS that my father sold him this car and now he was driving it. Not having a car made things very difficult for a traveling salesman, and we traveled by train, but only during certain hours. Later on, riding the train was no longer available to Jewish people. My father was a good salesman, and the factory continued to pay for the apartment so my mom could keep her showroom and my dad was able to continue his work. Jews lost their jobs, but because my father was so important to the factory, he had permission to continue temporarily. By the way, all the Jewish people got kicked out of their schools and also from the universities. My father sold men's stockings and had elastic in them. The garter were not needed. Later on, his privilege was taken away. Within 2 years, from 1939 to 1941, the Nazis knew who was Jewish, and later having wear a star on our clothing, and if we were caught without these stars, we were subjected to beatings and even death. In 1941, I was 13, and we were the second transport from Moravia to Theresienstadt. My father was put into a separate barrack from us. Later on, my father moved into one of the houses that were abandoned. He was lucky because he had a job. He was a disinfector all of a sudden. A dear friend, Freddie Hirsch, my gym teacher, was put into the camp a week earlier and advised my mother and me to find jobs around food, even peeling potatoes because the peels could keep us alive. I worked in the children's garden where we raised small vegetables, but only for the Nazis. My mom was a cook for 3,000 people, and that survived. I want to say that she had help in the kitchen. She wasn't the only one, but what did they cook? Just plain soup. I can say my mom was a dynamo.
All right, well, I'm going to ask you a question. You worked in a children's garden. How come you didn't just pick something up and eat it? Did you ever try that, and what happened?
No, I tried one time to get an apple, and with my tushy I pushed the stem of the apple tree, and I never realized I was being watched by some SS people, and I wound up in a dark room for 24 hours. Thank God they let me out.
Thank God they let you out, absolutely.
I had a cousin and my grandmother who died in Theresienstadt. She was cremated and thrown into a river. Just so you know, Jews are not to be cremated. She was 63 years old and died of cancer. Her only medication was 1 aspirin a day. My father's parents died in Auschwitz, and we taught this out after the war from the Red Cross. My father's 2 brothers had to dig their own graves, and they died from car exhaustion fumes. Let me explain to you. The Jewish people were pushed into a truck where the exhaust was going into the covered part of the truck. Then they had to dig their own ditch. before that, and they were shot into it. How many people still were alive as they were shot into the ditch, nobody knows. But it was scary to hear that. We did not have showers, but my mother kept the kettles burning a bit longer, one day a week, and with my cousins we bathed in the kitchen using
The liquid.
the liquid that was in the kettles. When I realize now what we did, I know if we had been caught, we would not have lived. My father left Theresienstadt a year before us, and we were told he was going to a working camp. This working camp was Auschwitz. We did not join him because it was for men workers. We did volunteer to leave Theresienstadt because we were told we would be with different working camps with no relatives in Theresienstadt. We were hoping to be in the transport with other relatives. I was always with my mom, made myself look older and healthier by soaking wrappers from labels and smearing the color on my face. If you were older than 35 and younger than 18, you only got 300 calories of food. If you worked, you got 800 calories per day. I don't want to talk too much about this, but the lining of my clothes was used as a bra and for my monthly cycle. In Auschwitz, I faced Dr. Mengele 6 times. We were nude during the searches.
Can you demonstrate what it was like to face Dr. Mengele? Show me what.
He had a conductor's stick. He never said a word, but he pointed to the left and to the right. And to the left, that means to the left was death and to the right was work. Thank God I went 6 times through this selection, and I'm here, and I was on the good side. Jewish men shaved us, and the Germans oversaw us. We were only shaved in Auschwitz. Yeah, we had to be naked at that time.
So, just to give you a visual, my mother and everybody is being shaved. It was done by Jewish men. The Jewish men laid on the floor, and the Nazis were in the corners laughing.
I was never tattooed because of my shorter time in Auschwitz, but my father was tattooed. From Auschwitz, I went to Öderan, and our family needs were met. Although I will admit it now, I worked in an ammunition factory, not truly thinking what could have happened to me. I put sand in the bullet machine, hoping to streak bullets so they could not be used. I was happy to know that I could have saved a life.
So let me get this straight. You're bathing in soup and you could have been caught. That could have been it. You're shaking a tree with your toches and you got caught. Now you're taking sand and you're putting it into the bullet machine, streaking bullets
Different
to make
places.
sure that her bullets were not going to be used. And she's 16 years old.
On April 11th, 1945, we were told to quickly leave and go into a transport wagon. Imagine 16-year-old Nazi boys with bayonets as they were watching us. We were given one bucket for our transport car to relieve ourselves, and were housed off once a week with our clothes on in these cars. I could see the railroad was bombed out along with bridges and where we would be walking. So I walked about 25 miles only to realize we had returned to Theresienstadt. which was now a liberation camp. As we got to this camp, we could see the Germans changing their clothes and running away. Now the Russians were watching and liberating Theresienstadt. The people that worked in Theresienstadt disinfected us in a typhoid quarantine, and after the war, I was still in Theresienstadt for a whole month. I was with my mom, thank God, and that was a miracle. I was told that someone was at the gate of Theresienstadt to see us. Just so you know, the gates had electricity in them. This someone looked just like my uncle, and how I cried out that this uncle was actually my father, just skinnier and without his mustache. He found us through the Red Cross. I later found out that I was so blessed having my mother and father alive. Had I had a brother or a sister, I believe they would have been killed. I was one of 11,000 Jewish people in my hometown that had survived parents.
And how many, when you actually got to the town that you came from, had surviving parents?
I'm the only one. There were 200 people came back, either the child or a mother or a father, but as a unit, mother, father, and child, I was the only one from 11,000 Jewish people. I never wish on anyone that I have been through. I believe that I am alive because I have a message. It is to tell you that God created such a beautiful world, only some people make it so miserable. Find happy people with goals. I'm happy to answer any questions and know that you did talk to a survivor of 3 camps, and this really did happen.